So if you ever had two data sets and you had two different pieces of information I need to plug in. So for example, if you have IDs over here and then you have some source data over here and you need to combine the two, then you probably heard of VLOOKUP, but maybe you struggle with how to make it work. So I'm going to show you two different methods today. One is if the data is within the same spreadsheet, and the other is if it's on an entirely different spreadsheet. So let's go ahead and jump right in. So we're going to use the VLOOKUP formula. And so just equals VLOOKUP. And there's a couple different components. So first is the search key. And this is what we're going to use to look up. So for example, here, our ID. And then hit comma for our next one. And so the range is where we're looking. And so we'll start with just our data here. And so we can start and select the whole data set just like that. And that will work great. The next one is the index. And so this can be a little confusing, but what this is asking for is what column do we want to return? Now, this is the first column. So if we did 1, it's going to return the same 1. So we can just do 2, for example, here. Then finally is the is sorted. And this is confusing, but basically when it comes to text, you're always going to use false. And numbers, it's really about if it's sorted. So we're not covering that today, but if we look up here, we've got this pulled back in. So we can drag this formula down and we can see it pulls in those names. Now, if you don't have a value here, it's going to return NA, or if you just make something up, it's also going to return NA. So either way, it's not finding the blank or that other value. So you can do stuff like wrap this with an if error and just say not found, for example. And that works like that. So that's the basics, but what if you have multiple columns? So you could repeat this formula. And so if we just do this, and here would be the next column over, so we can do 3, and we could repeat that again and again and so forth. But let's go ahead and streamline this. So what we're going to do here, let's get rid of this if error just for a minute. And so in our index here, if we could do multiple columns, that would be awesome. And so there's actually a way to do this. So first of all, make sure we wrap this with array formula. And then what we're going to do here is wrap this with curly braces. And then we can do multiple columns. So again, we do that index or that column number and return it just like that. And so now if we drag this down, you can see that fills in. Now one thing note, if I type in here, it's going to break that formula, right? Because it's trying to fill both of these cells. That's just one thing to note. If you get that ref error, it's because someone typed it down in there. Now, we only got 2, but we could fill in the rest of these. So let's do 6 and then one more, 7. Now we got all of our columns. We drag that in. There we go. Now we have all of our columns of data tied back from this data tab. Now, what if your data is on another spreadsheet? So there's a couple things you could do. First of all, we could reference that data directly from this VLOOKUP. So let me show you how to do that. So what you need from here, this source spreadsheet, is the ID number, which is the part right here. After that last /d/ this long alphanumeric, and before this / edit or view, whatever that is there. So we can copy that. And then here, what we're going to do is this is the data we're looking at, but we want to pull from here. And so we use what's called an import range formula and that spreadsheet URL. So you can use the whole thing, or you can use just this ID and then comma and the range string. So it gives you an idea there. So it's the tab name with any spaces. And in this case, if we go look, our tab name was data and then A through G. So data, and then if you pay attention, you do need an exclamation point between the tab name and the reference. And then we can just do A through G. And then close that out, hit enter. And we get this ref error. So this happens the first time you try to connect spreadsheets using import range. And so you do need to allow access just one time, and then it'll work from then on out. Now, if we drag this down, it's working just great. And so just so that way you can tell it's not coming from here anymore. Go ahead and delete that. And now, lo and behold, it's coming from this sheet. Now, one thing to note is the import range, you can only have 50 of them, roughly, in a spreadsheet. Now, they may have updated this recently, but that was the limit. So if you notice in each cell, we're using that import range formula. So if we had 50 rows, we'd be using this 50 times. So how do we streamline that? So one thing we could do is we could even copy that, make a new tab here. We'd call this data, and then we could use that import range formula right here. And then this data is living here, and we go back to the way we had it, right? Just the data A to G. So that's one way you can do it. But if you don't want to put that data anywhere on your spreadsheet, the other way you can do that is instead of using a formula for each row, let's get rid of these. Since we already have an array formula, let's do this. We'll do A2 to A. And lo and behold, this one formula is now pulling all of these. Now we're having some of those errors, right? Because this is blank. So what we can do here to make that from happening is just add a little if statement at the beginning. If A2 to A is blank, do nothing, otherwise VLOOKUP. And then there we go. Now we have an array formula. And again, just like the ones on each row, if I type in here like this, we do have that error. Now it does tell you what cell is the offender, so it says overwrite data in C4, meaning someone typed there. So sometimes people are like, oh, that's spelled wrong, I'm going to change it. Now you can't do it here because this is coming from a formula. So if you had to change it, you'd have to go back to that source data and change that. So that's just one thing to keep in mind there. Otherwise, this will pull in all your data and multiple columns. Now, one thing, you can pull these in a different order as well. Or if you want to skip one, so let's say we didn't want state. So we can skip that and we come in here, and I think that'd be 5 maybe. Yep, there we go. So you can pick and choose which columns that you want to pull through in that formula. And then if we add another one, let's say we just pull one, let's say that one, we add it here, and then it pulls through that other data just like that. All right, so that is it for today's video. If this was helpful for you, make sure to like and subscribe, and check out the other videos on our channel for more tutorials on both Google Sheets and AppScript. And as always, have a great day.